Hello guys, welcome to my YouTube channel. Can Arda Güler truly be the replacement for Toni Kroos or Luka Modrić? Today, based on yesterday's match, I would like to share some thoughts about Arda Güler. Before delving into that, let us first understand Arda Güler's natural position on the field. He primarily plays as an attacking midfielder, a role he consistently held during his time at Fenerbahce. It was in this position that he garnered the interest of FC Barcelona. However, Real Madrid later hijacked that deal and brought him into their squad. So, if we were to define Arda Güler's actual playing position, it is the attacking midfield role, also known as the number 10 position. This is the same position in which players like Mesut Ozil and Kaká used to play, that is, operating higher up the pitch in a creative role. Arda Güler has the capacity to execute that same creative responsibility. Speaking of the current era, if we were to mention recent players who have thrived in such creative roles, names like Jamal Musiala and Florian Wirtz come to mind. These are players who contribute to playmaking from advanced positions on the pitch. Now, if we focus on yesterday's match, Arda Güler's role was quite different. When I say different, what I mean is that he did not play in the number 10 position. Instead, he started in the number 8 role. Historically, in Real Madrid's system, players like Toni Kroos and Luka Modrić have played as number 8s. And trust me, the way Arda Güler played yesterday in that number 8 position, at no point did it seem as though he was out of his element. Rather, he performed remarkably well. Moreover, his presence on the pitch brought much-needed control to our midfield. Just think about it. We have struggled in midfield control throughout the season, but with his presence, we witness a more composed and controlled brand of football, something we have not been able to produce for quite a while. Ever since Toni Kroos' form declined, the element of playmaking control in midfield had noticeably diminished. Luka Modrić is still with us, but due to his age, it is unreasonable to expect the same performances from him as in his prime. You simply cannot expect him to run tirelessly for 90 minutes like a 24-year-old. Now, if we analyze our current midfield setup, we see players like Jude Bellingham, Federico Valverde, Aurelien Tchouameni, and Eduardo Camavinga. All of them are primarily runner-type midfielders. That is, they cover a lot of ground, are physically strong, and operate like engines moving constantly across the field. But none of them are deep-lying playmakers. In other words, they lack that unique ability to control the game by distributing the ball from midfield. While they may deliver a few progressive passes in a match, this is not something they tend to do consistently. However, because of Arda Güler's involvement yesterday, we finally saw that kind of control restored to our midfield. It felt as though we were watching the old Real Madrid once again, the version of the team that thrived on intelligent passing and midfield control. Earlier in the season, when Dani Ceballos was introduced into the starting 11, we witnessed something similar. He almost became the most important player in our midfield. But once he got injured, the void he left became very apparent. Had Arda Güler been given that same opportunity in that position earlier, perhaps we could have filled that gap much sooner. In short, there was no real balance in our midfield throughout this season. Among the forwards, 3 players operated on the left side. I won't even begin discussing the defense. It has been in a disorganized state. Yet, in the midst of this disarray, when Arda Güler came onto the pitch yesterday, it felt as though the missing puzzle piece had been found. The entire equation suddenly appeared complete. That's exactly how it felt. So, if we were to mention any major takeaway from yesterday's match, it would undoubtedly be Arda Güler. The moment Arda Güler stepped onto the pitch, occupying the central midfield position, he immediately demonstrated what he is capable of. He was brilliant in central midfield. Honestly, it felt as though he was performing the same duties that Toni Kroos used to fulfill. I'm not saying that he has already reached the level of Toni Kroos. No, I'm not suggesting that. But Arda Güler is certainly capable of performing many of the same functions that Kroos used to handle on the pitch. Yes, there are some differences. For instance, when Kroos received the ball, he would often generate long passes with precision. In Arda Güler's case, we noticed that he wasn't attempting many long passes. Instead, he opted for backward passes. However, this can't be held against him because Getafe was playing in a highly defensive manner. Often, when Arda Güler received the ball, there are almost four opposition players in front of him forming a defensive wall. In such scenarios, finding open space to distribute the ball becomes very difficult. That's why, in some moments, he had to pass the ball backwards. In one instance, we even saw him communicate with Vinicius, saying something along the lines of, "You come down a bit, I'll pass the ball to you." Such communication between them was evident. This clearly shows that Arda Güler can play in a central midfield position. For a long time, we've been in search of a deep-lying creator, someone with a profile of Enzo Fernandez, Alexis Mac Allister, Vitinha, or Bruno Fernandes. Now, we don't need to look elsewhere because we already have such a player in our squad. All we need to do is utilize him properly. If you do not use him, that in itself becomes a bigger problem. There is no benefit in keeping him on the bench all season while repeatedly saying we trust. Whether or not he gets a chance against Barcelona remains to be seen. But I suspect that the same conventional, predictable formation will be deployed again. For instance, if Vinicius, Mbappe, Rodrigo, and Bellingham are all played together, the right side of the field will become completely vacant. And if Lucas Vazquez is positioned at right back in that situation, there's very little else to be done. In such a scenario, Arda Güler must be given a chance, because he is special. His performance yesterday proved exactly that. Yes, I agree, a replacement for Toni Kroos was needed. But when you already have Arda Güler, why not use him? Unfortunately, the management made some serious errors in the transfer window. They failed to provide you with proper backup options. Carlo Ancelotti is also at fault to some extent. I will address that in greater detail in a future video. Carlo Ancelotti tends to overuse certain players, like Bellingham, Valverde, and Rudiger, who are being fielded repeatedly. These players are gradually becoming exhausted. Meanwhile, Endrick, Arda Güler, Fran Garcia, these players are barely being played. Take Raul Asensio, for example. When did he get an opportunity? Only when Militao was injured. Had that injury not occurred, we may never have discovered such a player so early on. This is why Carlo should have trusted the academy players from the very beginning. If you can put your trust in academy players, backup options will automatically emerge within your own squad. Just look at what Hansi Flick is doing. He's promoting players like Marc Casado, Marc Bernal, and Gerard Martin into the first team. Lamine Yamal and Pau Cubarsí were also developed under Xavi's leadership. It is because Barcelona places trust in their academy players that they are now ahead in this aspect. So, why can't Ancelotti do the same? Our academy is not substandard. For instance, there's a center-back in the academy named Jacobo Ramon. If given the chance, I believe he would also perform well. Anyway, I won't digress further into that topic. What I want to emphasize is this. Arda Güler can play in the number 10 position, similar to Mesut Ozil or Kaká. At the same time, he can also play in the number 8 position, taking on responsibilities similar to Toni Kroos or Luka Modrić. What lies ahead for Arda Güler? If Xabi Alonso were to take charge, how would Güler fit into his tactics? I will explore those questions in a future video on my YouTube channel. So for this, subscribe to my YouTube channel. Also follow in other social media platform. Link in description. Stay safe. Hala Madrid.